Well, hello everybody. I thought we'd take a second and go over the Run Disney Perfect Season, and then what's coming up next after that. So let's get to it.
3, 2, 1, go!
So for the Run Disney Perfect Season, at least in 2022 to 2023 race season, that included Wine Dine, Marathon Weekend, Princess Weekend, and Springtime Surprise. Now, I guess there may be some different variations of this going forward, given that now you could do a perfect season that's just Walt Disney World only, or a perfect season that includes Disneyland, given that Disneyland comes back for this next race season. But in terms of what we were able to do before, this was the perfect season, given that, and I should say also, it also kind of it depends on how you defined if a perfect season included Castaway Key. Some people did include that. I did not run that, so I did not include that. And I don't think technically Run Disney did either in their calculations for what they said at Springtime, that there were roughly 1,300 perfect season participants going into Springtime, which was the first time I've ever seen them acknowledge such a thing, but we'll get into that in a second. First up, I wanted to discuss a little bit about registration, given that Run Disney registration is always an adventure. Let's put it that way. Between whether it's website crashing or whatever else. So my intentions going into this race season was I was not planning to do a Run Disney Perfect Season by any means. I had initially only signed up for the half for Wine and Dine, which I have never just done a half for at least for Wine and Dine weekend, for any weekend. I've only done one race once, and that was my very first race, the 2015 Walt Disney World 10K. I only did that race that weekend. Since then, I've done multiple races for every weekend that I've done. And that doesn't seem to be stopping anytime soon. But, so I initially only signed up for the half. And lo and behold, then I was like, well, what about the challenge? Now, it was sold out, but periodically you'll find that the races reopen. And there are a few trackers and stuff like that will kind of catch these when they open, and you got to be quick. And I would get on several times, and I'd get on, register, and hit pay, and then it would be locked out. I'm sure I'm certainly not the only ones. I've seen plenty of posts and stuff about that issue. So I did finally get in, and actually what I did is since I had the half, I upgraded to the challenge, and there is a fee with that. I want to say it's $45. That may have changed since, things always change. But there is an upgrade fee charge that they do make you pay in terms of the difference. So there was that. And then on top of that, of course, I wasn't registered for the 5K either. So that was a separate thing. So I, thankfully that again opened up via those trackers and stuff that I was watching, and was able to get into the 5K. So that kind of set course. I believe that when I registered for when I upgraded to the challenge and then the 5K, I had already signed up for Dopey maybe. I don't remember exact timeline. But Dopey registration was a whole other ball game that I'm sure many are well aware of, given that it was the 30th anniversary of the marathon and 10th anniversary of Dopey. There was already going to be some a lot of I guess chaos in terms of getting registered, and there certainly was, because if you were a part of that, you knew that registration day was not fun. Basically took all day. That I've never seen it that bad, and thankfully it hasn't been that bad since. Princess registration was fairly, I shouldn't say uneventful, because it did go very quickly, but it wasn't marathon weekend bad. I like everything. Like the challenge went out in just over an hour. 5K was just under an hour, and going back to Dopey, that was under 50 minutes, about 47 minutes that took to sell out. So these things went very quickly this race season, and for the most part they continue to do so, even going into this next race season. The one that kind of then moving into springtime surprise, the challenge did take a little bit longer, which seems to kind of be a thing with that one, given that challenge is 3 races. It's a little different than those two race kind of weekends from other challenges. That one took a few days to sell out, and I think the 10 miler took even longer, if it ever did. It's just kind of, and I think time of year plays a big role in that one, given that it's usually in April. It bounces around given spring break, those kind of things. But I did want to also kind of touch on, now I don't have a breakdown. I'd have to really dig through receipts and bill or credit card bills and all those things to see like what overall costs would be for this weekend, and with hotels and flights and and really flights to some of those you typically fly Southwest, so points, I can use points towards flights and stuff like that. So there's really no good guesstimation on what overall I spent on this season, and I really don't want to know what I spent on this race season. But I will say that the overall cost, not including fees, was are you looking at Dopey is $620. This is not including the 6% fee that runDisney tax on to these costs, or onto these race registrations. So there is that. But so $620 for Dopey. You're looking at $97 for the Princess 5K and $365 for the Princess Challenge. Wine Dine, $95 for the 5K, $360 for the Challenge. Springtime Surprise, all 3 races, $305. So that gets you just under about $1,850. Again, not including the fee. If you had the fee, you're closer to $2,000. So just in race registrations alone for 12 races, that is $2,000. So this most certainly is not a cheap thing to do. People balk alone at just doing Dopey at over $600. Now, just talking about price alone, would I do this again? I'm not. We'll get into more of this later, but just I don't. Given my runDisney history and my what I'm going forward with runDisney, I'm not stopping. So the prices don't concern me as much, I guess, as may some other people. So there is that to take into consideration. But overall, I guess we'll just kind of go down a little bit weekend by weekend and discuss each one. Now, for Wine and Dine, this would have been my 3rd year running that, and it's a different weekend. It's a lot of fun. I think outside of marathon weekend, it's my favorite weekend. You do, as part of if you run the half and or challenge, there is the after party that you can partake in after the half that night, Sunday night, which is included in that registration, as well as a $15 kind of gift card. So that's why you may see that challenge is a little pricier, because you get those extras included, which is nice. But overall, it was a warm one. I think I struggled with the course. The course this year was different from years past. They took out Animal Kingdom, and we did run through Toy Story Land and Galaxy's Edge for the first time, which was really cool. But then once you leave Hollywood Studios, it's just, I think we had like 7-8 miles of just road, which is just kind of ridiculous. We run the same kind of course for springtime, except minus 3 miles of road time, which really Run Disney put in an out and back for the Wine Dine course just to kind of make up those 3 miles, which was the out and back was definitely the worst part. I don't know, it's not my favorite. I wish they would go back to that Animal Kingdom course. Now without that, the marathon during marathon weekend is the only race you can run into Animal Kingdom. So that's kind of disappointing. I know some don't love Animal Kingdom, but I certainly do. It's my favorite park. So only getting to run through there on marathon day is not my favorite thing in the world. So hopefully that changes in the future, but we shall see. I think theme wise for Wine and Dine wasn't my favorite. I think probably of all 4 weekends is probably my least favorite of the themes. You had Coco for the 5K, which was great. I do really enjoy Coco. You had Raya and the Last Dragon for the 10K, which is whatever. Soul for the half, again, whatever. And then Genie for the challenge. Putting those 4 together made absolutely zero sense. They tried to tie it together with music. Again, that just failed, I think. And it seems going forward again, they've, I think, kind of gone back to trying to tie it to food for next year. But again, the themes are kind of all over the place. But we do have Figment for the challenge, which I am all in for. But again, we'll talk more about that in a second. Moving on to Marathon Weekend. Now, this weekend is my one that I don't really ever see myself giving up. It's like, it's my one weekend that I want to continue doing until I literally cannot do that anymore. This was my 6th Dopey, my 9th Marathon Weekend overall. It's kind of like a big reunion, a ton of friends, a ton of people you meet, you've met over the years. It's the biggest weekend of them all. It's a different feeling from any other weekend, which I love. I absolutely love. And this year, of course, with the anniversaries, the 10th anniversary of Dopey, the 30th anniversary of the Marathon, they tried to do like a 90s retro theme, which was fun. I don't think I didn't have too many issues with it. They tried to bring out some of the different characters from the 90s, did stuff like that. So they really tried to play into it, which I thought was great. Overall, probably my favorite weekend. There's just so much going on. It's not a weekend I focus on so much on the park going, but more what's friends doing, what's more. And plus you have a marathon. This is the only weekend with a marathon, so your game plan is kind of different for that versus when you have just a half, which is not great to say, but you have a whole different mentality when you tack on a marathon to a weekend versus when it's a half or less. So there's that. But overall, great time marathon weekend. I always have a great time at Marathon Weekend. I don't see myself not ever having a great time at Marathon Weekend. So there's that. Now, the next one, Princess Half Marathon Weekend, I'll talk a little bit more in depth about, I think, because it was my first time ever running this weekend. Again, anniversary year, you had the 5th anniversary of the challenge and the 10th anniversary of the half. Or I take that back. I think it was the 10th anniversary of the challenge, the 15th anniversary of the half, if I remember correctly now. Yeah, it should be. Because of 2009. No, right? I think that's right. Whatever. Either way, another big anniversary year. So that was cool. I was glad I picked that year to do it. And the princess choices were good. You had Jasmine for the 5K, Belle for the 10K, Moana for the half, and Cinderella for the challenge. Overall, I think, there's a lot of talk about Princess Weekend going into it, that it's obviously it's a female-focused event. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. That is absolutely, there should be, that encouragement and stuff like that for, those female-focused events like that. But I was nervous or skeptical going in to just, I was expecting the worst. But thankfully, that didn't happen. You hear a lot about, at least I have in the past, of the expo just being a complete disaster with people fighting over things, and which has happened. I mean, there's videos and photos of such happening, so it's the legit concern. But there was none of that, which I thought was great. I actually thought the expo was a bit better controlled or behaved than even Marathon Weekend, which surprised me. And overall, I felt the Princess 5K especially had a lot more kids or families running than I had seen at other runDisney 5Ks. It is the only untimed race of the weekend, but I just felt like it was more of a family vibe than other weekends that you see, which was cool. Overall, I really did. It felt kind of almost more laid back, or it definitely has a different vibe. You have it's a different. It's just different, and that's okay. There's definitely, they talked about it a lot, but it's the runDisney weekend with the most first timers. So there's a lot of people running their first races there too, which is great. Just thinking about Princess specifically, would I run it again? Yes. I'm not going to say I'm never going to run it again, but of the 3 weekends, it's not the weekend I'm going to, gravitate towards first. I think, obviously, like I said, Marathon Weekend every time. Probably it's a toss-up between Wine Dine and Springtime. I do really, really enjoy Wine Dine, but as of right now, I'm going to continue to try to run Springtime to try to, there's some, talk around whether there will be perfects for Springtime or not. It's been kind of a up and down thing with that topic, so we'll see. But I'm going to try to at least attempt through 5 years to see if they do, honor that status. So that's why I'm going to at least try to continue to do that one for now. Wine Dine will kind of probably be based around what the themes are, and if I get into a fall, marathon elsewhere. Like in 2021, I did not run Wine Dine because I ran New York. So, there's potential I could run New York again, or some other race that would take precedence over a Wine and Dine. So, there's that. But like I said, I would run Princess again, but it's not going to be something I would run every year, or I'm definitely not doing it next year. Whether or not the year after or whatever else, we'll see. But as of right now, definitely not next year. And then going into Springtime, the most recent one, this one's interesting because, again, you have rotating themes every year. You kind of have rotating dates every year. It kind of, it moves around given the Easter holiday. So it's kind of a tough one. It's smaller. You have a 10-miler versus a half. So it's a very different weekend. And the challenge, like I mentioned earlier, encompasses all 3 races from the weekend versus just 2. So it's kind of all over the place. This year I did really love the themes. It was, Cars for the 5K, Monsters Inc. for the 10K, Toy Story for the 10-miler, and Finding Nemo for the challenge. Now, I think overall, maybe this was probably my favorite overall set of themes because it was, very cohesive, altogether Pixar kind of thing. And they really played into that all weekend too, with characters out on course and music and all those things, which was really great. I think since COVID, and especially this past season, you've really started to see Run Disney lean into playing into the themes of these races. Whereas before COVID, I think, they obviously had the themes, but they weren't as prominent, or they weren't like, you didn't have like, if it was an anniversary year for a race, they weren't playing into like like the retro '90s theme like they did this year for Marathon Weekend and stuff like that. So you didn't have much of that previously. So I think overall this was. You had a lot. The weather overall, I don't think was really bad for any of the weekends. There was some, rain at points. It typically always tends to rain at some point during Wine Dine, whether it's races or the after party. Springtime, there was some threats of that. Marathon Weekend wasn't too cold or too hot really. It was kind of really good weather for Marathon Weekend. Princess was warm. But given, it's Florida, you gotta expect heat. So there's that. Medals wise, I'll talk, I think, there were some really great medals this year, but I think you saw a lot of issues with the way the medals were made. They're not like painted, but almost like, I don't want to say screen printed because they're not t-shirts, they're medals, but it's almost like a sticker or like a, adhesive type printing on the top of it. And it really became problematic during, I think, Marathon Weekend. Not so much for myself. I didn't have much issue with those medals. But for myself, I saw it with Princess, and my challenge medal for Princess, it wasn't until Monday, the day after the half marathon, that the challenge medal really started to peel, and it wasn't because I had done anything to it. It was just like, I don't know if it was the humidity, but just normal wear. I wasn't, I didn't drop it I wasn't doing anything crazy with it that I wouldn't normally do with my race medal. And but it really started to deteriorate, and some people I saw, their whole the whole paint job or whatever you want to call it came off, which is just crazy to me. You never really saw that with the pre-COVID medal. It seemed like they changed manufacturers at that point after the race pause, and with these new sets of medals, the quality is kind of gone down, which it shouldn't for the amount of money you pay for these races. And I do applaud them for doing some different things. Like you've had different kinds of spinners or way medals open, or like the Princess Challenge one was supposed to represent a clock, and inside this kind of 3D effect, and inside Cinderella swung on a pendulum like a clock. You just saw just a bunch of different kind of interactive ways these medals moved, which was great. I really like them doing those things, but at the same time, if you're going to do those things, then you've got to either change how you're doing the paint job, or maybe not make them so colorful. I don't know. There's got to be some tweaks there that can help improve that situation. Because I do think it needs to be improved, and I think based on the way every weekend was this year, there's a lot of complaints about that specific piece. So there's that. Now, going back to the perfect season overall, and would I do this again? I think I would, but it's got to work out. Like this year kind of just worked out perfectly for me to do. I don't think, it depends on where my life is and what, what's happening, especially, financially. Like I said, it's a big thing to undertake. But I would do it again. It just really depends on where things are at. It's not happening next year. Going into next year, I'm already signed up for all 3 races at Wine Dine. I am signed up for Dopey again. I am not going to our Princess registration is coming soon. I am not signed up for that. Or I should say, I will not be signing up for that. And Disneyland, of course. Disneyland is back. I will be running all 3 races at Disneyland to be one of those crazy people that has 11 medals from 9 days, basically, of racing. Still not entirely sure how I'm pulling that off. But that's happening. And then after that, I do plan on signing up for springtime. Like I said, I'm hoping to keep that kind of perfect-ish status going forward. And then looking ahead, even as part of that, recently Club runDisney registration opened to the general public, and there's 3 levels for Club runDisney: Platinum, Gold, and Silver. Platinum being the highest, Silver being the lowest. Silver is, I want to say, around $250-ish. I don't remember the exact pricing. But you have really no on-site perks. You get a jacket, you get your club card, you get part of the virtual race. That's part of only Club runDisney. It's all great. There's really no advantage to signing up for Silver, in my opinion. So that was out of the question to begin with. I think it's just a lot of money for a jacket, essentially, for that level. But whatever. I was very, when Club runDisney came out, I was very against it, you could say, and I still am not totally for it. However, it's it's hard to describe. All right, I don't know, not necessarily describe, but I think there still needs to be, for all 3 levels, given the prices for these levels, the Platinums are around $900, or it's like $950 or something. Gold is around $600, and then, like I said, Silver around $250, maybe even more than, I don't even remember the pricing, but anyways, not necessarily totally important. But I think there just needs to be more perks. Like I said, Silver, there's really no on-site race perks. Gold, your perks include what you get for Silver, plus you get early expo race merchandise access and 1 early registration link per race weekend. So there's that, which is really your 2 big value items. But is it worth $600? I don't know. Then there's Platinum, which I said is between $900 and $1,000, which is very steep. So you get everything I already said, but instead of 1 registration per weekend, you get 2. So that means if you are looking to run the challenge and the 5K, you can sign up for both. Again, and then this is you can only sign up yourself, the club member. You cannot sign up other people. And then on top of that, like I said, you get the jacket and the card and the medal, and then early expo access, and then you also get upgraded corral placement, which is a big contingent, a big point of controversy, I guess, across the runDisney sphere. which I still struggle with myself. I don't like placing, I don't like the idea of placing much slower people, or I should say potentially much slower people ahead of, people that may really or should be placed, where those Club Run Disney people. And I don't think there's enough Club Run Disney people to really make it a big issue. And it's not something I personally need, because I can, at least at this point in time, I can still qualify time-wise for, corral placement for Run Disney events. Now, there may come a time when I'm, older or slower, whatever, that I'm not able to do that. But as of right now, that's not a thing I need. But I did sign up for Club Run Disney Gold. And I know several people that have Club Run Disney, and they all seem to have, there seems to be some worth there. So I decided to give Gold a try, and the main reasons for that is, like I said, one, Platinum was not available, and just the price tag on that is just very steep. That wouldn't have been something I would have really been looking to pull the trigger on at this point. But Gold, I was willing to give a try, and we'll see how this year goes. I'm not, entirely sure how it will. If I'll renew, how I'll enjoy that. But for me, those two value items of the Expo access and the early registration link is what got me. I'm willing to, if I'm looking, Dopey's just one link, so that I'm not worried about. I'll get that taken care of. But if I'm looking to do another weekend where I'm looking to do a 5K and the challenge kind of thing, I'm not too worried about getting in for the 5K. I'd assume I'd register for the challenge via the early link, and then register for the 5K later. At least that's how I would look at myself doing that now. So there's that. And especially given the Disneyland race coming up. Now, I will have the early Expo access for Disneyland, which I think is the biggest kind of thing that tipped me over the edge to get that, because one, we really have no clue how they're going to handle the return to Disneyland. Obviously, we have history, but that's 2017 and earlier. We're nearing 7 years later at this point, so a lot has changed, and so we're not completely sure how they're going to handle those things. And I think that will be a big benefit in terms of the Expo, is having that access. And then, of course, I'm still doing, I'm doing Wine Dine, I'm doing Marathon Weekend, and I'll do Springtime. So I'll have those perks, that perk for all of those races as well. And then going into the next season, I'll have those early registration access, which, that's so far ahead. I don't even know what races necessarily I would sign up for that next year, but I'll have it, for whatever races I do want to sign up for. But in terms of Run Disney or Club Run Disney, I think, just even before I get any actual use out of it, there's some things I think that I want to see them add, and that's mostly on site again. I'd love to see them add, it doesn't have to be anything super fancy, but some sort of pre or post race tent area, or, call it a lounge, I don't care, whatever it is. But maybe, you have, roped off section, and that place has water, or, Powerade or something just for the Club Run Disney. The water and Powerade doesn't cost them basically anything. They're, getting that, next to nothing. So that, and then maybe, you have some bananas, some fruit, I don't know. You have some light things in there, and it's, if it's, assuming you put a tent there, then you could have, say it's raining or cold or something, it's kind of a cover for those people. I mean, you can't tell me, and I'll be the first to tell you that Run Disney is one, understaffed, and two, doesn't get all the resources that they necessarily should. And that's 100% true. But at the same time, I don't think they could. I don't think it would be that big of a deal to add something like that to the race area. To the actual races. I think that would be a big benefit. Now there's other things that you could say they could add, whether it's merchandise, for Club Run Disney, or if it's discounts, or some type of. But really, what they're doing for you is the early registration and the early merch access, which notoriously are the two biggest headaches of any Run Disney event. I mean, obviously you have a race itself that you have to run, but I mean, in the past, you've seen so many issues with race merchandise, and there's been so many issues with race registration, and those kind of takes the headaches away from those, which I get, but I just think there should be a little bit more for people that are paying all of this, money to be part of this club, and what are you actually getting in terms of the actual race day experience? That's just my thought. I've seen some other similar things. There's also some people that think that you should get a lot more even than that. I don't know. Whatever. But yeah, so that is a kind of a recap of the Run Disney Perfect season. My thoughts on that moving forward into next season. Me signing up for Club Run Disney and all that fun stuff. So this was just a lot of me talking to a camera, but hopefully this was helpful, enjoyable. If you have any questions about A, the perfect season, B, anything Run Disney really, or C, Club Run Disney, not that I have a lot of Club Run Disney answers yet, but I'd be happy to answer those down below, or on Instagram, or wherever you may find me. But until next time, we'll see you then.